So the first ones we're going to start with are these long mamas. If we did this correctly, then it shouldn't separate from the silicone because we're pressing it into every crevice. So this piece I just put on the front on her chin is basically 4 layers thick. Only one piece, but I folded it again. Oh, not yet. Okay. Yep. Plaster bandages technically are gauze with plaster Paris. Hold on, I'm trying to clean up a spot. With plaster Paris, they're soaked in plaster Paris, and that dries out. It's still in powdery kind of form. So we dip them in water, and it reactivates it. And once we put it on, we smooth it all out, and then it's just a matter of it setting up, which is the water evaporating. Let me get the water. Nothing special about the water, unless you want to do what I said earlier, either the hot water or the salt in the water. Okay. So the first ones we're going to start with are these long mamas. So this will give us our separation front to back. So people have their own methods of doing this. Some people just dip it in and squeeze the water out. Some people squish it all together and then put it on. You always want to make sure you smooth the plaster. So, and also try to make sure you know where your separation is, because once it goes together, it's going to be hard to get it apart. So most people at this point would do this. Scrunch it. Okay. I am spreading the plaster now. Okay. And I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise, just so I have just to get a little thickness to it. To your right, not too much, just your head. Okay. Okay. So now we're on, and I'm going, it's about the halfway point. And now I'm smoothing it out. We're doing the back half first.
Oh, we're going to do the back, okay.
So do the back half. You want to make sure. It does have a tendency to want to slip off because of the silicone.
And oil.
Yep. So just making it so it's thick enough that it holds and that we have contact.
Too.
It's what?
That it's keying, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Doesn't have to be perfect, pretty, but. Yeah, I know. 'Cause I'm not as high up as you are to drain it. Oh, did you take the long one or the short one? Okay, that's fine.
How many of these layers do you want to put on for the seam, Jeff?
I think we only need just do one more long one or two shorts, whichever.
Are you going to put that on the seam?
I'm going to do it right, yep.
Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing. I'll just do one more.
Yeah, how many times can we watch dipping? Okay, Rock, still okay? Mm-hmm. All right. Surprised you didn't fall asleep. It's funny with the bandages, you can hear when you have an air pocket because it doesn't actually pop because of the water.
Oh, cool.
Yo.
Tell Jeff whenever it's on. Yeah,
Roho. Roho, hey.
Chronic ill Nick. I know Nick.
Chronic.
Yeah, his name's Nick.
Okay. Now the rest of it's pretty easy, laying all the plaster down, the bandages. You just got to make sure they're always overlapping. Whatever you
nice seam, Rocky. You need to make sure your head's seam. What's up? Check. Yeah, you're all right.
I'm just making sure I'm getting all the contact I can.
Trying to cement her full.
Yeah. Becomes one, and when we pull it out, we'll have a ponytail we can use later on. And when we do, we have to let that sit for a couple of minutes just so we can get Vaseline on the seam to do the front. And we have to use Vaseline because plaster will stick to itself like silicone will. So, Plaster Bandage is there as a mother mold for rigidity. the silicone is not strong enough to hold its own shape until you get pretty thick. And so we need something to hold its shape for when we pour something into it to make a positive. And that's where the plaster bandage comes in. Once it sets, it's rock hard. And if we did this correctly, then it shouldn't separate from the silicone because we're pressing it into every crevice. But the bandage, as strong as it is not, it will eventually break down and get softer. But for pouring up stuff, it's fine. And you can always go back over it if something breaks on it or bends. Okay. Now we are doing just the back half right now. Once that's pretty well set, we'll put Vaseline on the center seam, and then we'll work on the front. Rocky, you doing okay? All right. As we said earlier, you always want to make sure you have constant contact with your victim model. Okay, don't move because this will separate. So now I'm applying Vaseline to the plaster, doing it onto where it's folded and everything so that the plaster does not stick to itself. I go about an inch wide. And yes, this is a process that a lot of people don't realize when they're watching a movie and they see a monster. A lot of people don't think about this when they're watching a creature in a movie that's a practical effect, how much work goes into it. So, all right. So we are now ready for the front half. And we'll be doing basically the same thing we did before with the silicone, work around the face and do the nose last. So we're still checking in, make sure, because actually the plaster will warm up and she may or may not feel it. So you want to make sure everything's still good. It's right near the end of the whole process. Well, plaster, as the water is evaporating, it'll create basically a chemical reaction and it will get hot. Technically, depending on what kind of plaster also, but it can get upwards of boiling, which is what, 212. So you can actually get burns. Plus there's also lye in the plaster, and if you have it directly on your skin, that's not gonna help either. But when you're doing this, and say we have an alginate cast, you will feel that warmth coming in. So this piece I just put on the front on her chin is basically 4 layers thick. Only one piece, but I folded it again so that I don't have to put as many up front. And when we get to the nose area, we're gonna take smaller pieces. Now this little piece, I kept folding a little piece over and over. When you're doing just a face mask and you need to support it, a lot of times people will just pour stuff in there and then the nose crushes. So I like to make it a pretty thick piece, even though this is going to be a full head and it'll be supported up here. Just want to make sure it's getting done, getting secured. Now, a lot of times, I like how you brought that up. A lot of times people refer to this as a death mask instead of a life cast, because people like Lincoln and people like that, they would take, after they died, they would cast their faces, and it became known as a death mask. One thing I hate about plaster, UltraCal, you can wash it off, it comes off smooth. Plaster starts balling up and getting little tiny pebbles, and I'm leaving it in the surface of the bandages. That's why Mike wears gloves when he does it. So this is the back is already done. Front's getting there. We will pry the edges apart. We should mark it too. Pry the edges apart so we can get the front half off and then the back half off. And you're right, I should have done the back over the front, but it's okay. So we'll take that off and then slice up the back and get it off her face. We can. And then it'll be ready for pouring whatever material inside that we need. So I'm just marking it right now so we know where the halfway point is between the front and the back. So that when we put it back together, we can line it up. And I mean, it'll line up pretty much by itself, but we're just making sure. And they can say all that. All right, Rocky, when we go to do this, take it off. I'm gonna need your hands, so you can probably pull it up, but I'm gonna need your hands on either side of your face, okay? But not yet. All right, so,
And try and stay.
right. So what I'm doing now, I'm not gonna take it off, I'm just checking where the seam is so that it's easier for us. Doing a little bit of prying underneath so that we get a little crack. You feel the heat from this yet? Okay, it's gonna squeeze your ears a bit. No, not yet.
You got it. You
Okay.
just take it away.
Yep. We're taking this off, trying to get the ponytail through it, so we can take it off. And we made the silicone thick enough, so normally you want to try to keep half of it on, half of it off. But all right, so now what we're going to do is split it up the back. All right, so now I'm going to cut this.
You guys want to head on?
Okay, you can start moving your face around inside.
It's a fun Rocky facial reconstructive surgery.
Oh my God.
She's back.
Oh,
She's back.
you okay?
How do you feel, Rock?
Wow, that was the ears. Holy shit.
Damn.
Look at that.
Damn, that's
All right,
awesome.
let's look inside Rocky's
My
Are
ears
my
had
eyebrows inside?
holes in it, air
One
pockets.
eyebrow.
Yours didn't.
Oh my
Show a
God,
picture from inside.
What's left of her wig?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So it came out really well. As far as we can tell, there doesn't seem to be any
You look different.
any major air bubbles. So actually, yeah, it's a really positive thing. As you can tell, it's
Whoa, that's my face.
they can see what Jeff's doing now. Jeff, you want to go over it?
Right now, I'm just removing the bald cap. I'm just using 99% alcohol, and it's just coming right off. But I don't want to pull it and rip her skin, so.
Like we haven't
Yeah.
already.
We ripped no skin, just gave you a wax job. Face feel okay?
Feels fine.
Yeah, so whatever residue glue she has can wash off with soap and water or more alcohol. Not a big deal. Old time Spiricum, you'd have to alcohol and alcohol and alcohol, but we didn't use Spiricum. So
Cool.